They also said, the government's lawyers were saying that even if it's not a tax, it's constitutional if the taxing power could theoretically support it. So they're saying even if everybody knows it's not a tax, but the Congress could have used the taxing power, even though they didn't, then it's still constitutional, then that gives them the authority to do it. And that shows how many games are played with these issues. So they were trying to make that argument. Now there's several things going on, because there's this law called the Anti-Injunction Act that says if you have, that you can't stop it, assessment or enforcement of a tax until it's actually been incurred. So if it is treated as a tax, then this whole case would have to stop. And they spent the first day talking about that. They haven't decided that. If they want to duck, they could duck. I'm so bad with names. There's an attorney, Michael Bender, who's such a great guy, spoke last Sunday. Hender. He pointed out that a penalty in that context, a tax penalty, for example, would be a tax on lawful activity. A penalty in the, say, a criminal sense would be a penalty for engaging in unlawful activity. So he was arguing that it could not be a tax. It could not be a tax penalty, because it's saying you're not allowed to do this, and if you do it, it's a penalty. He did a better job explaining it than I just did. But in any event, it was a very good distinction. There was a lot of talk about how whether a tax has as its purpose raising revenue, and a lot of the justices said clearly if this provision works, no one will pay any penalty. So the purpose is to not collect any penalty. It is clearly not intended to raise revenue.
But if the IRS is actually the one that is collecting it, they argued it was actually related to tax, although it's not a tax directly.
That's where they were trying to say, well, it's like a tax, or it's under the taxing authority, even though it isn't. And of course, it was very clearly portrayed by Congress and legislative history and by the President as being a requirement and a penalty. And then let me just, I don't know, I probably should stop, but I'll finish with one thing that what the heck, I'll boast. I noticed, I haven't heard anybody else say, is when I was trying to read this, I was really struck by how the provision says, first of all, that's what I want to say, you said you have to buy health insurance, but it's not just you have to buy some health insurance, you have to buy their health insurance that they like. Right. So if you buy health insurance, they can say, oh, no, that's not the kind of health insurance we want you to buy. And they can decide, from year to year, from the Department of Health and Human Services, what kind of health insurance they want. And what the statute actually says is that each person shall insure for himself and his dependents that he meets the minimum requirements. Now the minimum requirements, of course, refers you to a whole bunch of complicated things somewhere else. So it sounds simple, but it's really not. And one of the problems here is that actually the statute doesn't just require you to buy something, it requires you to think. For yourself first, and then for your dependents, you have to make a mental calculation and analysis. Who are my dependents if I've been divorced or whatever? For each of these people, I have to ensure, have I bought the kind of insurance that they like? So you have to actually have thought control to command you to actually think about it, make a decision, and ensure that you have the minimum requirement. Then of course part of that is you're going to have to buy it if you don't already have it. So it's pretty extreme. I think that we're going to continue to have some serious battles ahead, and I think if we dodge this bullet, we cannot go to sleep, and we need constitutional conservatives in Congress. And we need to,
John,
we're in it for the long haul.
John, before you go away, I didn't know this until Sunday night, that the Muslims are exempt from this.
Right.
On a religious basis.
Not all of them. Yep. But what I read, if they participate in Social Security, then no.
I have two really quick procedural questions.
But the point is this: there is.
The Christian Scientists don't believe in medical care, and they have a religious-based argument that they have no reason to engage in this economy.
Well, there is a Christian-based medical plan.
The Amish still are exempt.
Called the Samaritans. I forget the last word. Whereby you join it and you don't pay a premium. But when somebody has
In Richardson.
a problem, and even if it's surgery and $100,000, all the members contribute toward that $100,000. So far to date, any one incidence has never exceeded $385. Now this they are outlawing, as far as I understand it. That plan will not exist, as far as I understand what they've said.
John,
Now, that's not within the insurance, that's not an insurance company, it's not a premium that they're paying.
John, will you stay afterwards to address further questions afterwards?
Did Elena Kagan, did anyone ask her to
I
recuse
did,
herself?
yeah.
Let me point out, of course, I was expecting my former law school classmate to tell me how I'm wrong. But no, apparently Elena Kagan, according to Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, voted like, what, it was a year ago, or when this case started, in part of a motion, and the rule is in for some, in for all.
Right.
And so once she voted on that, she's in. And part of the problem with recusal for judges, which I think is a problem both at the Virginia state level and federal level, is the recusal rules are basically on what you feel in your heart.
Voluntary.
So yeah, so the individual judge just has to look within themselves and see beautiful things inside their own heart.
And not only that, John, but Justice Roberts said lay off of her, it's her decision.
But the second one is about
Before you
Mr.
go.
Barr.
He is not.
He said it about Clarence Thomas as well.
We're going to continue this afterwards, but I just want to
He said
address
I think this would be really
He said it
informative,
about
but real
Clarence
quick.
Thomas.
Wow.
I wanted to recognize John for an excellent presentation.